Hi, Min.
Hello, Nigel.
How are you? Where are you at the moment?
I'm at home.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Are you in the college?
I am. Yeah, we've got
Okay.
that's where home is during term time, in a sense.
Okay.
Here a lot over the
Yeah.
lockdown. And of course, we're surrounded by increasing numbers of students because, I mean, as you're probably aware, there seems
Yeah.
to be a
Cool.
fairly large scale return, although
Yeah.
not.
I actually taught a face-to-face lecture and on Tuesday.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the first experience, and it was a long lecture because we had to divide the class into two classes to
Yeah.
keep
How did it feel standing in front? Yeah, it was.
I enjoyed it, and even I had to wear a mask, and that wasn't comfortable. And
No.
after you sort of was speaking for a long time, and then
Yeah, it's tiring, isn't it?
but the students are. I find students even more engaging than I would think they used to be, and they raise their hand. They seem to want to say things.
They're thirsty for knowledge.
They're thirsty to engage,
Right,
to talking to people. And that is yeah. I know. I think it will work, and if of course the classroom has to be kept to fix the size and
no, I think things are definitely well, let's say looking up. I mean, of course we've been testing, and we have no cases in college again, so the uptick hasn't happened just yet. So I'm sure there will be one, but a little bit amongst that pop demographic. But no, I mean, they're just keen to get on with it. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Good. Catching up on things slowly.
Yeah. Hi, Valerie. Hello. Hi. Well, I was delighted to see the work that has been done over the last week from Lorenzo and Jasmina, kind of putting in the stuff we needed in 8.2. Ben and you guys have worked to restructure 8.5 a lot. I can see that's really great as well. So good. All good things. So I'm looking. I haven't retitled the chapter per se, but at some stage I'll tidy up and take in these changes. It's still growing in terms of the number of words. We're now at 11,000 words, but there can't be much else to say now. I think we'd hope that we would have a near finished version to work over frantically in the next few days to then think about sending around for people to review. So I mean, say review to give a first cut over that. So if we could perhaps start. Hi, Jasmina. Great to see you.
Hi.
Thank you. I can see your references peppered through the thing as well, which is very helpful. Yeah.
I think Lorenzo did quite a lot of it, and we were supposed to have a chat, but we haven't had the chance yet. So he had some questions, so I kind of came in to see what
we can do that. We'll go through those. Yeah. So let's just see where we are. As I say, we've given ourselves various subtasks, and I think a lot of those have been moved on, which is great to see. And there's various bits of polishing that can happen, but the data and models section, we were looking for just slightly more the authoritative references in there, which we're getting, not to have it so completely UK centric. But anyway, you had some questions. Did you want to? Were they for you, Jasmine, or for the group more widely?
I don't know. Lorenzo said he was joining. Is he? I can't see him.
Not yet. No.
I think we should maybe just wait till I can.
Okay, we can do that. Section 8.3, the fair data stuff pointed out that this is fair data plus, and that needs to be modified and changed. A few bits in there. The biggest change that I can see that we could probably deal with now, because the protagonists are all here, is the restructuring and refactoring of 8.5, which is now very much around, well, we agreed, data model policy life cycles and the challenges and recommendations that flow from that. who wanted to speak to that? I guess I can see that Glenn and Ben and probably Richard have been engaged in that. Would you like to just take us through the changes and what you've done there?
Yeah. So I haven't had a chance to talk to Ben about this, but I made some. I kind of split it into 3 challenges, recommendations, which I thought just made. I kind of felt it was kind of all. Well, it wasn't really separated out into challenges particularly, and I've tried to separate it out into what I think are the sort of clear things. So the first one is kind of about communication and sort of open
standards. Yeah.
Open standards for that. The second one is about looking at, outside a pandemic, looking at the opportunities for thinking about what data should be collected and how it should be collected, and setting up infrastructure in terms of tools and methods, but also in terms of trying to establish collaborations which would link data users and data collectors. And then the third one is this idea of doing this sort of dynamically during a pandemic to sort of, active learning. And I was reading through this morning, there might be still some scope to shift some stuff between those last 2 sections, because I think there's a bit of overlap. So just trying to make them as distinct as possible.
Yeah. I think it's a really helpful restructure, I have to say. I mean, I think it now reads, more consistently with the rest of the paper as well. I think changing your data collection in flight is really kind of going to be a challenge going forward. Richard, anything you wanted to add on that?
No. I mean, I'm happy to have another go through this. After this meeting. I think the restructuring is a good way forward.
Yeah. Okay. So that's. I mean, I think 8.5. I mean, it tells a story more consistently now across the rest of the paper as well. The stuff on platforms, still some stuff to be moved around there on 8.4. That hasn't been done. So that's to look at. Perhaps we could just move back to 8.2, because I see Lorenzo is on the call. That was we'd moved all this around to try and put the data modeling experience front and center of the chapter. Lorenzo, look like you've added many of the references we were talking about, and were there anything that you needed to just take us through what you've done there? Yep.
Yes, I wanted to ask a couple of questions, but first of all, to start with, I was going through some of it and thinking of some references, and the more I was reading and trying, the more I realized that I'm not necessarily the most suitable person to do that, because I mostly kind of develop models and try to fit to the data, and the data has been, like in SPI-M, lots of the data is collated from different sources and it's publicly available or non-publicly available, and then I was directly using it. So my knowledge of what's publicly available out there is de facto really limited. So what I did last night when I realized I couldn't do much was to kind of have a chat with my postdoc, Helena, who gave me lots of kind of good ideas. And while I was taking her through some of the paragraphs, she was noticing lots of inaccuracies. And so she was like, would you like me to have a go at kind of checking? It's not necessarily much of restructuring, but certain statements were incorrect in a way that I wouldn't at all be able to improve. So she was happy to kind of give it a go, and also to come to this meeting if necessary. She's not too concerned with authorship at all. If I ask her to help, she's very happy to help.
Which section are we talking about in particular?
8.2.
Yeah.
8.2.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I was just wondering whether it's a problem for everybody, for anybody, if I kind of drag her into the meeting to discuss these things. She's available at the moment if needed. And then it's not a matter of authorship, or it's just literally helping to make sure that the statements were made.
No.
As far as I'm
Sorry,
concerned.
Lorenzo, I missed the name at the beginning. Who was it?
Oh, Helena Stage.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's been working with data quite a lot, and especially early on. So if people do not object to that, I'm happy to involve her.
Has she had a chance to read through it and would draw our attention to particular issues, would she?
I can do that because I've been reading through it and had comments from her, but she's been happy to go through the entire, to go through the section today or tomorrow. And Jasmina, is it you who wrote part of that section?
Yes, there is parts that I wrote and parts that Nigel wrote. Nigel, did anyone else write it?
No, I think it was between us. I mean, it could well have been that it was lost in translation when I was trying to restructure. I may have well taken liberties.
I mean, I'll be interested to have a conversation with her. Sorry, I didn't respond to you yesterday, Lorenzo.
No, Jasmina,
too much.
I understand. I was supposed to kind of like do this a week ago, and I'm a bit bobbling along and trying to survive at the moment. So yes,
I see what you mean now. Yeah.
That's all really. So if people don't have anything against it, I might drag her here to listen to part of the conversation, and then see how she can help.
I think that's fine. Why doesn't she suggest changes, and then the three of us go through it? And I guess Nigel, if we change this and we then put it in the new format for you to look at it, that would be the best way to do it.
I think that's probably the best way, because I don't think we need, I think it would be, and it's great she's willing to do that. I hugely appreciate that. I think if you were to do that between the three of you, I mean, we're going to suggest the process by which we do this, which is I will probably take these changes in and then just reissue immediately after this meeting, reissue a version of the paper, or we can leave it as is and you can work on what there is, and then I will take stuff in. It depends how quickly you can have that discussion. Yeah.
I think we should have it today, Lorenzo, if you are free, and if she's free.
Yes, maybe later on in the day. But yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do it that way. Let 8.2. If you three could take what we have and perfect it, that would be excellent. Yeah.
But can I? There was still.
But I can see. Sorry, I can see in the comments what is the, shall we say, thorn in the eye, and I am happy for those thorns in the eye to be changed. But let's talk.
Yes. So one thing I wanted to do now is to kind of scroll through it quickly, because there were a couple of points I really wanted to ask generally, and I think, and the only reason why it might be useful if Helena is here is that if she has something to add to those questions and or answers. But then I'm very happy to kind of take it between Helena.
Is she available now? Can she come in now?
Yeah. Yes.
And Nigel, do you mind if we invite her in? And...
No, do that. But yeah, and let's give a chunk of time to this. Let's give the next 10 minutes or so to going through this, but then we do need to move on to other elements. Are people okay with that? Sorry, just is that all right? People happy with that? Yeah.
I also noticed, sorry, that in the folder in the Dropbox, I think Dennis, you made a PDF of one version. Yeah.
The PDF is just the version that I think was said it was 832.
Yeah, I was still.
Just I just thought it's if I'm reading that during the meeting, I don't want to edit it by mistake or anything like that. So
exactly.
Yeah,
it's just for looking at during the meeting. I'll do less in unwanted. I'll delete it after the meeting. But
no, that's fine.
Others might like a reading only version too.
No, it's just that I edited it further, and so it's the one with LP without any number at the end that I just made a PDF of, which is probably more useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, I'm going to bring that PDF up now then. So we're looking at the one that's latest in the serial, which is a PDF with ending in 25_LP.pdf. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And I removed the other two because they are they're just a slightly earlier version of this. So I made quite a few edits to section. Hi, Helena. I'm just going through the stuff we discussed yesterday and ask questions, and if you have anything to add, that's welcome, obviously.
Thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
She's saying hello. Okay, so apart from comments like I find this sentence confusing, which is it's just a matter of understanding who wrote that. It would be nice to know who wrote that sentence if they can clarify what they meant, because I didn't want to edit it and changing the meaning of that. And I couldn't quite work out what the exact meaning was.
Which sentence are you talking about?
So I started from top, so it's the second paragraph of 8.1 at the moment.
So LP4, I find this sentence confusing. In all cases, the data represents decisions we take about what we think it is important to note, deposit, and describe. Sorry, that was me making this general point about representational abstraction, that whenever we collect cases, and whenever we collect data, there is an implicit background assumption that isn't always apparent about what we take to be important about the data we've collected. So it's the metadata question again.
That's a good point. It's just it's a bit convoluted. As
it is. Yeah. I'm sure there's verbiage to be improved.
So I'll just leave it there because it can be sorted later on. I've done a couple of corrections.
That's important. Rate versus
number. Yeah.
Number. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but these are all minor things. Then I started putting some references in section 8.2.1. I wanted to ask a couple of questions about references. So there were some. What has been really helpful early on has been this collated data, which is effectively has happened through scraping news feeds. And this is in no way has been a principled process. There is nothing like, I mean, it's made publicly available with whatever quality is possible to do, but it's basically collated by people scraping news in Chinese and stuff. And that has been absolutely extremely useful because early on you can actually estimate some parameters that you cannot estimate later on, which is what I was trying to write in the extra page that I've made in the past, but I understand that it's quite a lot about estimation, which is probably beyond the data itself. So I'm not sure whether we want to kind of reinstate some of the comments from that page.
Well, it's quite salutary to understand that at the outbreak, that people were relying on, if you like, not even great literature, they're relying on actual other forms of news dissemination to find out some of the facts of the matter. I mean, I think perhaps that's not been fully appreciated.
I can just.
I think it's important. Sorry, but it's important. So I agree that was the case at the beginning, but I think we need to differentiate between amount of data, a source of data, and the trustfulness of the data. So, I mean, I think if we are going to say that any data was good enough at the beginning of the outbreak, I think that's a dangerous statement.
No, I completely agree with you that the quality is very low. And I would also, this was my attempt, differentiate between data that has been extremely valuable, but extremely literally scraped by people from news feeds and collated in some, like most of the time Wikipedia has been essential for that because they
I remember Ian Hall saying that and me cringing when I heard him say that.
Yeah, but that's true. Like Wikipedia has been collating, like people have been putting on Wikipedia some data, and I don't even know whether we want to.
No. Look, I mean, as an open data advocate and an admirer of many of those sorts of communal efforts, I think a shout out here and there, understanding their limitations, is quite interesting, and we should never forget that in the grip of these emergencies, some of those tools are quite important initial. But I mean, I think health warnings attached.
With caveats. I think then I'm happy to add that, but as long as we put the caveats really strongly in.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely 100% on the caveats. But in fact, my idea was to differentiate between what's now in the first sentence, which is some collated data sources, and then the second sentence, which is talking about more formal, publicly available, international, highly reliable data sources and that's the second thing, like John Hopkins or our World in Data, which it's a completely different level, but they arrived a little bit after, and so So I would have. These are the site. My first question was, can we cite Wikipedia? Or
yes, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
You can cite it, but I think it's important that we cite it in the sense that if it was the case, we should recognize it. One of the interesting things is, in what we're talking about, a future set of challenges, will it inevitably be the case that whatever pre-positioning we do of infrastructure, there will be a moment when some of this stuff is making its way through these other channels, which is quite interesting to think about. But
and
I think Jasmina's going to say that, but of course, you know, the challenge must be to try and improve our quality data assets as much as we can, as fast as we can.
Absolutely. So to work together on this, Jasmina, that sounds great. Your caveats are very important. Absolutely. And then, well, a couple of more words and so on. I'm scrolling through 8.2. Sorry, just before 8.2, I've just added a sentence. There was this discussion about happenstance and all of the data that is routinely collected through our kind of current technology that is collected anyway. And I just comment on the fact that there are problems about availability, anonymization, interoperability, consistency, but also there is an important problem that all of this data is not necessarily collected to understand transmission. It's collected anyway. And so it often just offers a proxy for the contact patterns that are relevant for infection spread. So I thought that was worth adding, because we all try to measure how people interact, but how to put that into a model becomes very difficult, because it doesn't necessarily describe exactly what is the process that relates to infection and therefore to spread.
You're talking about the section just before 822.
The last paragraph before the recommendation. Yeah. So I thought added that is important, but I'm happy to kind of be happy for people to disagree, or to tell me that I've just misunderstood what people mean.
Well, I mean, you're right, aren't you? I mean, there was that big kind of furore around contact patterns and contact tracing when, you know, Bluetooth proximity didn't tell you whether you're in the same room as somebody else at all. You know, just you know, you've no idea whether there's a wall between you and them or whatever. So yeah, just relying on it exclusively.
Then there is the.
I'm happy with this. Happy with the addition.
Thank you, Jasmina. It's 8.2.2. I'm on the third paragraph. There are lots of kind of citations about SPI-AM having access to multiple data and answering multiple questions. And I put some references there. I think the easiest thing is, Jasmina, for us to go through it together. And then there is a paragraph that starts with data is key to correct modeling and analysis. There is a lot of reference on models in SPI-AM that have used this data stream and that data stream. I am in SPI-AM and I don't exactly know what data streams other models are using. So I'm wondering whether, Jasmina.
So I have an overview of what models use what data, but I'm wondering whether correct is the right word in that sentence, because you know, you need the data as inputs and you need data to compare the outputs after a while, but that doesn't mean that what you do in between is not correct.
Sure. But you wrote that section because it looked like there was somebody who had a clear understanding that some model exactly.
I wrote that section, but I'm not sure whether now I'm reading it and looking at it, whether correct is the right word. Data is crucial for modeling. I think it's more appropriate.
That's fine. We can make that edit.
But happy to go through this and kind of go bit by bit if you want.
I basically didn't know what to put as those references because I do not know which models in SPI-AM are using which data streams, because we take a very agnostic approach where everybody is doing whatever they think is best, so that then we can combine the estimates as independent experts' opinions. That's why because we never really had time to literally sit down in pairs of groups to kind of compare the model and understand exactly what the other.
So the best way to quote is, so I've written a recent RSS paper that untangles what the different models do from your time series that you send me. And so it's not out yet. It's for sort of a short review at the moment, but there might be something to quote there.
Yeah, that's fine. I just had the impression that when you were writing this model used those data streams and then reference, you had in mind a very specific model that you know about, and I don't, so I might need your help.
Yeah. Happy to put that in. Yeah,
that was very good.
Could I just ask how much detail about that we actually need?
That's a good question.
I mean, do you feel we really need a blow-by-blow account of which models used which data sets? I mean, it's important to know.
I think it's meant to be indicative, Valerie. I think you're right. I don't think we did a blow by blow, but I think it needs to, the point was to show a degree of authoritative insight about what broadly was happening. I think what I didn't want was a bunch of data engineers to kind of come along and opine about what the perfect would be whilst ignoring what was happening on the ground. So I think it's about striking the balance there.
Yeah, and I think so. If you look at that paragraph starting with data is key to correct modeling. So the three references that I was thinking to put there were going to be three broad references. So one that uses a lot of data, one that uses a specific data, and one that uses another specific but different survey.
That sounds good to me.
And then in the publicly available dashboard, we can put your model because you do that and I do that.
Yeah. Or we can put simply the
I think the point to make is that these different styles of modeling draw
exactly.
data in different
That's
ways.
the point I was making, Nigel. There, yeah.
That sounds good, and I'm happy to provide examples. I do agree with Valerie that once we've done this bit, it would be nice to kind of re-look at it with an eye to what is either too specific and or too UK centric. But I can't keep all of these things in mind at the same time while I'm reading and editing specific words and so on. But I agree with you, Valerie, that's also important. And I do have a feel that we have a natural tendency of being UK centric, which we can't avoid, but we can at least clarify that. Clarify when lessons can be learned that are more broadly valuable.
If I may, sorry, Lorenzo, if I may very briefly on that point, when we look at the modeling that's been done, even in Western European countries that have put a lot of money into public data dashboards like we've got here, the majority of the modeling they tend to have 2 to 3 different data streams, but very, very seldom does any serology go into it. And I think that's a key thing that we could perhaps highlight, is that serology and ONS surveys and those very concerted efforts have been very specific here in the UK and not so much broadly across the rest of the world. I think that's maybe
just on that point,
example.
Helena, thank you for making that point. And just on that point, have they been a difference? Have they made have they been consequential?
Just in some ways, yes. What the ONS survey, for instance, does is you get asymptomatics to a certain extent. You can monitor the amount of antibodies that are happening. So this is what is happening in one of the pillars beyond. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4, but it's one of the 2. And so when you're trying to determine what's happening in the regime of stochasticity, when we have very few case numbers or things are starting to ramp up again, that's where those surveys really give you a robustness where you don't have to be concerned about changes in test-seeking behavior, because it's often also the time of year where people, maybe the children are out of school or you're going away on holiday, and so you don't expect people to engage in normal take-up behaviors. So it does absolutely have value, very specifically, among other places, in those time regimes. We probably shouldn't go into that much detail here, but it's certainly something to bear in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the value of ONS and REACT are that they are survey data collection. It's not how do you say, like a control. It's not data collection that happens as as a bystander of a control, while testing is often targeted at the areas where cases are appearing. If there is an outbreak somewhere, the testing gets focused on that area, and therefore it's very difficult to use the pillar 1 and pillar 2 data robustly, because we do not know the biases that goes into why people are being tested. While the ONS has this kind of, as the principle of being like a random sample in the population, that is extremely helpful. But obviously it has the limitation that numbers are smaller, and you have many asymptomatics when the prevalence is very low, many negative tests when the prevalence is low. So yes, thank you, Helena. And also, like, Helena being Danish and having lived in pretty much every Western European country in her life, she probably has a view of other countries that is much superior to mine.
I like to stalk everyone else and see what they're doing.
I think so. I completely agree. I mean, while we are here, while we're discussing this, maybe another thing to note is the importance of serology really comes when you think about variants and emergency of a new variant or emergency in a specific area, because you then have more access to information.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's, I think, what Helena said, and adding the serology, but also I guess the genetic data there, because that tells us the percentage. So we've seen it at meetings recently where you see people quantifying how much of different variants there are in different regions, and that's the aspect that I don't think many countries do and input in their modeling. So that's aspect. But I mean, just mentioning it because we did talk about genetic data somewhere else, but maybe that needs to be going in there. I'm just thinking loud here.
Well, I mean, the litmus test will be on inclusion is, does this tell us something about data challenges and anticipating what we would want to do differently in the future in managing infectious diseases? And I think this, there's a strong steer in that we should be expecting these issues to arise again as we. It's not as if this particular infectious agent will be especially unique. I mean, it will have many generic challenges.
I'm aware of Nigel being like we are short of time, so I'll briefly also mention after the first recommendation, then a couple of paragraphs, like the one started with modeling, really needs.
Which page are you on? Where are you in now? Sorry.
Just moving on after
the early spread.
Yes, so there is a recommendation there written in italics, just below where we were. And then 2 paragraphs later, there's a paragraph that starts on modeling of the early spread. So I think that paragraph, there is a bit of a mixture of too many things. So we'll probably, I was thinking about splitting it, but this is, we can do it with Helena and Jasmina.
I think so. So this paragraph is meant to kind of summarize what was done quickly. The other thing is, if you split it and if you add more, we are adding a lot more words, and we are already on what did you say, Nigel? 11,000 words.
11,000.
So I don't think we want to add. I think if anything you feel needs to come out to dilute the point or make it more robust, what you were trying to say.
I think the point I thought the paragraph who put this in, what was interesting about this was the fact that we, in the early days, were relying on some really quite important proxy data, but it was data, the Polymed and the BBC influenza, the contact matrix models were. They were what was ever to hand. It wasn't as if we had very developed assets of that sort.
I mean, I think it's making a point of these, as you say, core things that everyone used at the onset of modeling worldwide. Because what they had, and they all had little faults here and there, like the IFR wasn't correctly, but then it was adjusted. The Polymod was overestimating certain contacts in certain age groups, whereas the BBC pandemics was underestimating elderly mixing, etc. So, but we don't have space to say all that. We just need to highlight they exist and they were used.
What I think confused Helena and myself is that some of them existed beforehand. Like there were models of influenza spread that were ready to go, but they failed in some ways because this is focused on elderlies and influenza is focused on children, really. And the polymod study in the BBC pandemic were available early on, but instead, like the COMIC survey was collected exactly because at lockdown, the contact patterns change and we have no idea how they change.
Yeah.
So some of them were stuff before the pandemic, which was ready to go, but somewhat like not.
I think those observations described in that way are really important to make because I think they carry over. It's like fighting the last war, no doubt. We will have some of those issues going forward, right?
But I agree that there is also, as Jasmina says, sometimes it's better if you have to say something confused. You might as well not say it if you're already.
I mean, if you think you can say that quickly, Lorenzo and Helena, just make the point of they existed before, they were used here, and help the modeling effort at the onset or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll try to kind of rephrase it briefly.
And I'm happy to kind of work with you on that.
Thank you. Then there is just before the last recommendation. There is there's a discussion about pillar 1 and pillar 2 data. There is also, if people don't know, there are pillar 3 data, pillar 4, which mean different things. Pillar 3 is serology. Again, it's a paragraph we might want to kind of slightly amend to.
Yeah, well, do that. Just look. I mean, this has been very useful discussion over the detail. This is a section that we particularly need to get right because we do not want to blow our credentials by making. Egregious claims or
but at the same time I'll bear in mind that we do not also need to be excessively precise because
exactly
not to say everything about what's happening in the UK. The point is a more general one.
And I think the reason why pillar 2 was specifically mentioned because there is a lot of questions around pillar 2 inclusion or not, whereas the others are sort of included in general terms, if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah, and then.
But I get the point.
And then in section 8.2.3, and the 4th paragraph, for example, is talking a lot about individual level data, times of admission to hospital, entry and exit. This is all great, and to be honest, that data is vital. But that is the data that I think it's extremely rarely publicly available. I don't, apart from like scraped early data in Wuhan that was a line list. I think all the other line list means you have one row per individual and you have some events at the time when these events occurred. And this is absolutely crucial for estimating the time it takes to move from one thing to another. They are very rarely publicly available. And even now, I think most of the line lists that I handle are PHE data that is not publicly available as far as I know.
I think that's worth making a sentence there, adding that, Lorenzo.
Okay, I think we focus a lot on the importance of essentially line lists, and line lists are, like, in my opinion, I don't know whether they should be made available, but there are so much identifying.
Yeah, but I mean, we need to make them available under the right conditions. And look, I mean, building this infrastructure isn't about making everything open. It's about making stuff accessible under the right conditions if it can't be open in a particular way, but having it there in the first place. So I
also think this section is about is starting to look forward. So it's kind of saying what would we really want to have had as well. So it's not. So I think making the comment that it hasn't been available is a good one. But.
Okay, thank you. And then there is a bit on genetic data, and we can work on that with Jasmina.
I think the genetic data was written before genetic data I have recently seen results of. So I think this does need updating.
Yes, yeah, okay, we can work on that. But what Helena pointed out last night, which made me very wary, is that some of the stuff we're saying currently in that paragraph is that it wasn't widely available early on, but in fact, publicly available genetic data, the first submission, she said, was 20th of December 2019. So there was some genetic information. It wasn't very much, and it wasn't very used.
Yeah.
But certainly the statement that it wasn't available, it's
okay.
Wrong.
So you wouldn't do modeling with it, but it was there.
Yeah, so we need to be, that's what I mean when we need another I think another pair of eyes would be very valuable to ensure exactly what you're saying, Nigel, that we don't kind of blow our credentials.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Listen, that's really helpful. I'm sorry, we've spent a long time on that, and actually that's a mark of us really getting somewhere close to where we want to be handing this stuff over. So you will work on that as a trio and just bring it into line. I think the point that Glenn made there right at the end is that some of this can also anticipate forward. It doesn't. We don't want it to be completely semi-detached from the rest. It's got to be the motivating. It's in a sense a motivating section for the rest of the chapter.
Yes, I'm afraid I need to dash.
Yeah, that's all right. No, that's very helpful.
And then disappear.
Okay, just to confirm, we will meet next Thursday. I will have a slot next Thursday, 10:30 as normal. Just because I think this might take a few days to get to the state where we're happy to send it on for both internals. We've got friends and family, people like Frank Kelly to look at it, but it just needs more work, I think, on some key sections before we do that, and before it goes on to the actual series. Sorry, I've just blanked on the name of the chap who will look at it on our behalf, Dennis. Hans, of course, yes, Hans, yeah. All right, so that's what we'll do on that. What I'd like to do now is perhaps just talk about the other section, which is well represented here, because I think the FAIR principles are more or less they've been stable for some while. The section around platforms and life cycles is still clearly something that we've got a lot of evidence. I'm talking to things like Wikipedia and other global platforms that have been useful. It's quite interesting to reflect on that. But the real thing that I wanted to talk about was the extent to which the section on data model policy life cycles, what we might want to move to in terms of better infrastructure support. Really, Ben and Glenn and Richard, how far that this is, say, uncontroversial, but other people in the field wouldn't say this is all very well, but it's not realizable. TRAs of this sort are just going to be always chasing to catch up in the face of all the challenges we confront. I mean, I think it's exactly the way we should be going, and I think structuring it in the way you have with these three subsections has been very helpful. Do you want to add anything more into that? What would you look to do beyond what we have here at this point in 8.5?
I mean, I think there's some. Yeah, there obviously are lots of big challenges within trying to realize that, the sort of vision that's kind of put there. So, I think some of the things like 8.4, the data platforms, I think is one key aspect of that, because it potentially allows you to do these sorts of analyses in real time with very confidential data. That's one. And then this idea of open epidemiology standards, I think that's something which is difficult to do, but it's in a way it's not difficult. It's more, it's a community effort is required. And so it's very difficult it's not entirely clear to me how to make these things how to ensure that these kind of standards are accepted widely and sort of people buy into and actually sign up to. And that's the biggest difficulty there. And then the third one, I think, is a sort of a challenge to, for example, so the most controversial thing would be to do experiments during a pandemic to see how different interventions work.
Yes.
And that's obviously, there's a big political and social kind of question mark around whether people will accept that, although I think in effect we've done it anyway.
I'm going to say, hasn't that sign kind of in effect been done?
Yeah, but to make it explicit and to build tools that allow you to exploit that, right, I think is critical.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Any other? That's really helpful. Any other comments on that? So we can see the changes there. There's a section on data skills that needs a little bit more peppering with perhaps some external reference. A lot of that would be uncontroversial, I would suspect, but it needs perhaps a recommendation around what the data skills training and support will need to look like. And then data institution, data policies is still a little bit epic heavy. I think what I would propose is if we could give ourselves over the course of the next week before the challenge to ourselves is to put this into a shape that we will hand it over to Frank and Hans and sign that off next Thursday. Would people be content to do that? It's a few days later than we said we would, but I don't think that's going to be too injurious to the situation. Also got to include Min's diagram and try and get some words out of this. Can I just ask Dennis and Valerie brutally, what's happening on word counts of various other chapters underway? Are they having this same kind of problem of expansion, then having to cut back?
Yes, some are. I mean, I think the aim is to try and make them as concise as we can, and not to go through at the end and see whether parts can be shortened without loss. Yeah. Obviously, the more concisely we can write, the better it is in terms of being easy to read and so on, I think. But on the other hand, one shouldn't cut out material that we really want to include just because of the word count. So it's a question of making the words really, using the words that we need and to make the case. I'm not sure that helps very much, but I think, I mean, the trouble is at the moment, because it keeps changing, it's hard to read with that in mind, really.
I agree. So
but I think probably some contraction would be possible.
I think I think what we're going to have to do, I think we're just going to have to take the editorial scissors to this at some point. The question is, at what point people will have stopped adding stuff where we can then just contract back down? I suppose if I was to ask Jasmina, Lorenzo, and Helen, would you be able to pull your material together for the end of the weekend? Would that be possible?
Yes, on my side.
Yes,
I'm doing it today.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd like to get it done today as well, if possible.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Well, then work on that principle. If the life cycle group would also make any changes that they would want to make over the next 2 or 3 days, is that possible, or are you going to need the weekend?
Yeah, before the end of the weekend would be better, because I've got a whole day thing tomorrow.
Yeah,
so before the end of the weekend, I will then get to work and hopefully deliver up for our meeting. No, we will deliver up for our meeting next week a clean PDF a few days in advance for people to read. Okay, that's what we'll undertake to do. And so there'll be a reading document. And so what we should do is send something around by about Tuesday for people to look at, with a view that bring your best kind of editorial eye to it, such that we can take more words out, not add any more words in. Okay.
Can I also ask a question about references?
Yeah.
Because I was just putting down references without worrying too much. And how concerned are we with the number of references?
Yeah, that's a good question. Don't know. It's a scholarly journal. I mean, you know, references. I don't think we're not going to run to 100, are we? But we might run to 50 or 60.
I think we had an original principle that we would try and keep references down to on the whole, so that, you know, it says to to try and give selected and authoritative references rather than feeling you have to list everyone. But I mean, I think whether a rough rule like that makes sense will depend on the, may well vary from one paper to another.
Okay, so at the moment we're gonna make sure we're not.
Yeah, don't be over liberal, but expect that perhaps in some cases they might get taken out again. It depends whether they really make the point we want them to make. They have to be authoritative. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think we had a deficiency of references at one stage. Now we're starting to bulk them back out again. We can look at them with a critical eye. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oof, okay. Anything else, Dennis and Valerie? Are you happy with the trajectory? I know it's always delayed gratification, but we're getting there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your best guess as to when you might be able to get that off to Hans or Frank Kelly or others?
I think when we've seen it for a final time on next Thursday. So I think the Thursday
towards the end of next week.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That would be good.
Yeah. Otherwise, and we just have to. It will go warts and all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, when it comes back and we look at the comments, we're not restricted to only making changes in reliance on those comments. We can make other changes we've thought of ourselves.
Yeah.
If we want to at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Agreed. All right. I think we have a clear way forward. So the modeling section will get some work on it today. We've got a definitive, the version we're currently working on is sat there in a PDF form in the Dropbox. Once the modeling people have worked on it, I might well change, just put one definitive version in there, and modeling, the life cycle people work on it to the end of the weekend. I will add some other elements in, and we will endeavor to circulate that, say, Tuesday evening, to meet on Thursday to see what we've got. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
Does that work? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you again. We're getting there. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Thank you, Helena.